extending over the Christmas period.
Between carnations and the button mums, that's another thing, and the white button mums are usually very nice. And this is a little idea too for last minute thing. If you have a few little baskets on hand, perhaps you had an arrangement given to you at some time or another and you have it stashed away in the corner, take it out, dust it off, fill it with a bit of pine, a few baubles, and I have a sweet little angel sitting in this one.
That's really nice.
And put that on the end table.
Again, getting into the symbolism of Christmas, the pine is very appropriate because the evergreens refer to the everlasting qualities of the Christian religion. And that's quite nice too. You've got another mug here.
That's another thing that is always handy to have on hand too. And it looks nice sitting on the table with a little bow. You can add here again the carnation, a fresh flower, or you can add the little baubles to it, and it makes a pretty little gift which the person can take home and use again and again.
Yeah, so you really don't have to have an awful lot of training in arranging to do a few simple little loose arrangements like this. They're informal, they're thrown together without an awful lot of fuss, and they're still very effective.
No, it doesn't take long to whip them up at all, Shirley. And fortunately, we have a lot of craft stores in our area now, and where you can pick up the little blocks of Sahara or Oasis if you're using fresh flowers to use for bases.
And all kinds of little interesting ornaments and things. It's getting better all the time.
And of course we're always hounding the flea markets to find every kind of little vase or little basket or little thing that we can hoard away until the next time we need it.
Okay, we'll take a break then and we'll come back with some wreaths that we've prepared for Christmas.
A lot of care involved. It doesn't take time to whip a few things up from it, but you have to give the pine the care that it deserves, and the cedar or the spruce, whichever you're using. First of all, when you bring the pine in, mind you, they're on great big huge branches, as you well know is the way I get it. And I have a couple of great big 5-gallon pails, and I have the water at lukewarm temperature, and I plunge them immediately into the warm water as far as it'll go. A lot of the old-timers will tell you to add sugar or molasses or honey to the water.
Is there a reason for that, or is it just old wives' tales?
Well, I thought for a while it was an old wives' tale, but I've been reading about it consistently ever since, that apparently as soon as the pine hits the warm air, the sap starts to run from the fresh cut, and the sugar or honey or molasses replaces the sap that is running and helps it to preserve it a little bit longer. Then when you go to use it, you trim off the smaller pieces as you need them, whatever size, and make fresh cuts so that you can start in on them.
So even if it's been sitting in the water for a few days and you know that it's been drinking, you still cut them again before?
Still cut it again.
Okay.
Actually, it should be drinking for a good 2-3 days before you start working with it. Now the first thing I wanted to show the people is really how easy it can be to make a wreath. All you need is a bent coat hanger. Leave the end on it so that you have something to use for hooking it. Pick up a package, they're quite reasonable, at any of the craft shops. The floral wire is what I use. As I mentioned before, the pine has a natural curve to it. So just face it onto the coat hanger and continually wrap the wire around.
Nothing elaborate, you don't have to measure or do anything
and then
challenging?
I try to keep them all going the same way so that then you get the next one to fit in and continue with the wiring. So it's very, very simple, and it doesn't take very long to do at all.
And inexpensive? Coat hangers are not expensive. We all have more than we need of them. And of course the pine you can pick up on the roadsides, can't you?
Pretty well. Mind you, there are different kinds of pine. This happens to be the red pine. The white pine has a longer more luxurious tufts to the edges, and then there's jack pine, which also lends itself to decorating because of the little short tufts.
There's something about gathering the pine too, either pine cones in the summertime or the branches now, that makes it a permanent reminder that Christmas really is here, and it's just time to get down to doing things about it.
When you're out camping in the summertime, don't forget that wherever you go in any of the parklands, there's bound to be white pine and red pine, and pick up the cones that have fallen, bring them home, and then save them. They can be sprayed, they can be used naturally, wire them together, and that can be added onto the top of your wreath or into any arrangement, and then with a bow on top, and your arrangement is complete.
Aside from the glitzy kind of spraying with either silver or gold, you could also tip them with liquid shoe polish to give it a frosted look, or if you wanted the appearance of snow settling on the cones, you could mix a really concentrated solution of soap powder, laundry detergent, and just whip it up in the mix master, and it dries quite snow-like once it's settled on.
Well, one thing my mother used to do many years ago, and I believe the product is still available, and that's any of the soap flakes that you can buy.
Like ivory.
Like ivory, the real soap flakes. And you dip them in water and then just shake the soap flakes on top.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it gives the impression of snow as well. But there are a lot of different cones too, not necessarily just the pine. I see, Shirley, you have a beautiful wreath here that's using a lot of different cones.
Well, here again, what I've put together cost me next to nothing at all. These wire frames that I've mounted this on, they're available for less than $5 depending on the sizes of them. They come in this size and larger, I believe, and several smaller sizes as well. And I've used a hot glue gun to just surround the frame itself with cones, and I've used probably 4 different kinds of cones here, and they're all things that I've gathered up over the years and accumulated in bundles, and you have to really have a stockpile of them before you can get started, because there's no point in running short of these things. But just to complement them, I've added a few basic oak acorns and empty walnut shells. I try when I'm using any foodstuffs not to leave them intact, because they do attract weevils, and I plan to recycle this wreath and keep it for several years. So these have all been opened, and the nut meats have been removed, and then they've been re-glued together so that you don't get the little livestock crawling all over them. There's bur oak added to it, and a complementary piece of greenery, and a red velvet bow, and that's all you really need. And aside from the cost of the glue and the wire frame, it's all sort of found.
Another good use for pine cones, can the camera pick us up on this one here? There is a basket, an old wooden type basket used by carpenters that has cones glued all the way around it, filled with more pine cones and added with a couple of bows and a couple of ornaments. It would look beautiful beside a fireplace.
I have an old, my grandmother's original wicker laundry basket that I use, filled with pine cones, and there's always a sad feeling with the Christmas tree once it goes up, but there's no gifts underneath, and I always fill that overflowing with the variety of cones that I have and set that under the tree, and it makes it look very nice and homey, and loses that lonely feeling of being a neglected tree.
After the tree, everything is unwrapped. This is a different type of wreath that I've made. It's made with cranberries, and they're just stuck with straight pins onto a styrofoam ring. There is and then ribbon is attached through the center and around the side, and added a bit of glitzy bells, a bit of pine, and a ribbon. There's only one little thing I have to say about this one. When we were taping this show, the fresh cranberries were totally unavailable, so I decided to try and do it with frozen cranberries, and unfortunately as they melted, the juice melted with it, and it was rather an unsuccessful way of doing it. So when you're doing it for yourself, use the fresh berries.
A little bit messy, but the message is still there. These can also be used as surroundings for punch bowls if you're having a Christmas party. Rather than hang them up on a door or a wall, you can set your fruit punch or whatever in the center, and it makes a nice table arrangement as well. The wreath, of course, for Christmas is a symbol of unity, which is very important at this time of the year, and that's nice to reinforce that idea. There's all kinds of different ideas that you can get into. Straw flowers, any kind of dried flower arrangement is very, very nice. A good assortment of all types of artificial things that could go into there. There are grapevine wreaths that are very, very popular, and there really is no limit. You can make a theme wreath out of almost anything. These pine ones, by the way, are extremely good if you're hanging them on an outside door, because they don't dry out as easily as they would inside.
No, they don't.
And they would definitely last you right through.
But if you're using them indoors, that's why I still strongly suggest that the person uses pine rather than spruce. Mind you, cedar will also do quite well. The only problem with cedar is that it tends to be quite flat. I have a couple of pieces here that I brought in, and it's very decorative, but it is very flat. It doesn't have the openness and the roundness that pine has. So
you really have to use quite a bit more.
You would, but this does go beautifully in an arrangement. It is lovely placed flat, as you say, even around a punch bowl or a serving tray or around an hors d'oeuvre tray when you're serving at Christmas. I guess we'll take a break now for a moment, Shirley, and be back in a moment. Both members of the Sudbury Horticultural Society. We've been around for quite a long time. But how about if I were a new person coming into the city? Could you tell me a little bit more about what the Society stands for and what our aims are?
We've been around for a long time, as you know, Claire. 75 years this year we're celebrating, which is quite an accomplishment for a group of this type. We've seen some pretty dramatic changes in the city since we started up. When the group was originally started, there really was very little in the way of greenery in the Sudbury area. The mining processes were burning literally everything that was in a vegetable class in the area. But some very foresighted individuals in the community saw that there was a possibility with a little bit of effort to bring it back to its natural verdant state. And with a good deal of public input and promotion, we've reached the point now where really we don't have to apologize to anyone for the type of greenery that we have in Sudbury. People are growing lawns, fruit trees, all kinds of challenging things that really were unheard of in this area 35 to 50, 75 years ago.
I know that there were quite a few visitors to our area during the summer, and they were quite astonished at the changes in our community over the past few years.
Yeah. That's always refreshing to hear people comment on the changes. They can remember coming through in 1950 and being extremely disappointed with the scenery around here. But partly because of the super stack, partly because of the fact that gardening is a very popular hobby, and the influence that our club has had with encouraging people to put that extra little effort in. We have some really beautifully landscaped properties in the area. We're also doing a lot of work from a public point of view. We've got a bed at Civic Square that has a high profile. We get a lot of compliments on that. We've had a fair bit of input into Science North. We're hoping to get a piece of property someplace in a very visible spot in downtown Sudbury to use as a bit of an experimental ground, and we could use that as a mock landscape situation and maybe do some experimenting with things that have not been tried in the area before, and it would give a chance to sort of show off our abilities a little bit more.
You're thinking of special kinds of trees and flowers and...
With a certain amount of backup from professional people, I think that it could work out very well. And we have enough members in our group that the maintenance itself would not be a real challenge. but it would make the society a little bit more visible.
The society does do an awful lot of public plantings as well, doesn't it, Shirley?
Well, yes, aside from the ones that I mentioned, we're continuing to upgrade the grounds at Pioneer Manor. We've got Jarrett Plant Center that we routinely do. The hospitals have benefited from our services. We, from time to time, will go into the schools and educate the youngsters on how to grow bulbs for the following spring, that sort of thing.
I'm glad you did mention the youngsters, because we do have right now a very active young junior group starting up.
Yes, it's looking very
this
promising. I'm expecting wonderful things from this group. They're really the mainstay of the whole group, because unless we can encourage them to garden at a very early age, the next generation is not going to be interested in it, and then the whole effort falls apart. So it's very important to keep the youngsters tuned in.
Fine, and thank you very much, Shirley.
You're welcome. This time of the year is that you can get live plants available through the greenhouses and the plant centers, and with a little bit of careful handling you can get them home safely and care for them and get a slightly extended wear out of them, and it helps to bring the summer back into the cold months. Christmas, of course, is a time when everybody wants to give gifts, and for people that are interested in gardening and plants, this is an obvious gift choice. Probably the most popular Christmas plant is the poinsettia, because it's steeped in tradition. It's the obvious plant connection with Christmas. The colored bracts, of course, are reminiscent of the Star of Bethlehem, because it has that star type of appearance to it. So it's the one that we traditionally